Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Umlink Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My name is Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your host. Weekly, I present to you experts from around the world, and today I'm in Ipswich, in the UK, with someone who we both worked in the same organisation. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. So before I get into today's interview, I'd like to recognise our sponsors, who are Umlink, who are taking the confusion out of energy management, Clean Energy Revolution, for their knowledge and their networking in the renewable world, B2B Energy, for the 11-week energy program and helping organisations reduce their third largest expense. Hark Systems, renowned for their energy software. Alexis Energy for their power management. Led by Vision, who are a LED and a controls company. Watts for their electronics and EV transition. Carbon Black Global for their waste to energy initiatives. And lastly, our certificate partners, Esther Energy. Welcome to episode 71 of Umlink Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My special guest today has negotiated 40 years in low energy design, construction, energy management, and environmental assessments. He's developed an acute ability to problem solve, which is involving gathering information and making judgments based on that gathered facts. Now, we both worked for the public sector many years ago, but strangely, I was leaving the organisation as he was joining. So without any further ado, I give you Gary Rutter. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Paul. Yourself?
Yes, very well. And good to see you again. We've just been chatting off air for everyone regarding our past loves of our football clubs, but we won't go into that just yet. So, no. Gary, I know you from many, many years ago where our paths nearly crossed. I had just left and you had started. We'll probably pick up on that shortly. But for the benefit of our audience today, can you give some background to yourself?
I decided back when I got my chartered engineer, which is when my daughter was born. So I know it was 28 years ago. Sorry, Hannah. I got a job at the Met Police in their property services department. And the reason for going was because, as the energy manager, I had sat on the 100 kilowatt hour user group, which was the group that set up taking users' opinion, shall we say. That's why I was there working for Ipswich Borough Council. In the setup of the 100 kilowatt market, how would it going to be easy back when you couldn't buy your electricity in that way? You went with a local supplier. And I was doing a bit of energy work at Ipswich, but not a lot. And I thought, actually, this is where I think it's going. So I was 25, 28 years before my time, which is not always a good place to be. Right. But I went down to London from Ipswich, where I am still. And that was a couple of hours journey in the morning, a couple of hours journey in the afternoon. It was a young man's game and went to the Met Police, which is, as you say, is where our paths crossed with some colleagues there as well. And it was trying to take me and the Met up into whatever was the best practice. At the time, you could sign a declaration. The government at the time had one out, and they'd wheel a minister out, and we brought the commissioner out, and they signed a declaration to say that they were going to save 10% or whatever. But the problem with all of that actually was that energy was about to get cheap. With the opening up of the markets, the price dropped, sometimes artificially, but it did nonetheless. And that meant saving energy was not quite such a thing you could buy relatively cheaply. So it made your bottom line, whether you're in the public sector or anywhere else, it made it a much smaller animal. In the Met, of course, it was always a big animal because it's the Met itself is a big beast. It's got lots of properties. So that's where I then moved to consultants nearer Liverpool Street, an architect, multidisciplinary architect, to work on low energy buildings, because that's been my interest and remains actually my interest. So I worked with them, and then from there, the commuting got too much. So I then picked up a job with a large Wilmot Dixon, which are down this part of the country, a very large constructor. And I worked for them for many years. After that, I continued back went to a company called MLM, which is now called something else in Ipswich, but they're a European, now worldwide engineering consultancy, multidisciplinary engineering consultancy. But they did specialize in low energy buildings. So that was interest. That was, again, following that theme through. And then an opportunity arose for me to work for myself, which oddly, I don't know if it's odd really, but way back in the day, when I was in my early 20s, I worked for myself, but had a contract with the regional authority, National Health Service district, in the area as they were then. And I was doing energy surveys of their sites with a view to them making a decision to move into gas. Because at the time they had very large, often Victorian, as they still do, buildings, and they were steam and they were oil fired. So they were everything that gas wasn't, which you could break down into small, be more efficient. And so I did some of the work in this area, East Anglian region anyway, particularly around Ipswich and Suffolk. And so the thought of going and working for myself in the energy field wasn't completely bizarre. But it did, I have to say thank you to my wife, because it really did require, you've got to pump a bit of your own money in. It changes how you work. You don't work any less hard, but you do work differently. And so I thought, I'll give it a go. And I've now been doing that, working for myself for 5, 6, 7 years. I'm not really sure how long. In general, I work for other energy consultancies. I found working for myself to be, apart from where I have contacts built up over however many years it's been that I've been at work, I couldn't get the big, or what I would consider the big and important names to consider me, because I'm a limited company and all the rest of it, but I'm a one-man band, and they're often looking for some of the bigger names. So good proportion of my work comes through bigger energy consultancy, energy engineering consultancies that maybe their guys don't want to come down to the south of England. There's one particular, integral, up in Newcastle. I do a lot of work for them, and it suits them and suits me. I don't mind traveling, so I'll go wherever is necessary. So I get to work with some large companies, but they're not my direct client. They're my client's client.
Yeah.
One or two of them, not of them, but I have picked up some of my own as well along the way. But it's an interesting time to be in energy, I think, now at last.
You've obviously been in the industry for a long time, similar to myself. And what I've found, you've just mentioned it there, it's an interesting time now. And for me, the reason why it's an interesting time now is because we've got a lot of legislation that's around regarding ESOS and SECRA.
Yeah.
We've got things like, we've just said COP, and there's a lot of focus and talk about climate change. If we go back to them days of the Met Police, we weren't doing, so before you arrived, it's quite refreshing to hear that you was trying to change things up, because I joined there as an energy consultant, and all I was doing was putting BMS systems in, which was great, but it wasn't challenging enough for what I wanted to do. And but then, we're going back to mid-80s. And I think the Met Police were well ahead of their time, putting building management systems in.
Yeah, a lot of what they were putting in, of course, was replacing existing. They had a lot of ISS Chloris equipment, and I know we put a lot of Trend stuff in, but Trend was cutting edge then, and it was, and it was good equipment, and we could pull it back. And we had a bit of a bureau ourselves back in the office. A lot of the work, though, from my angle, was trying to get a database, a monitoring and targeting database set up for, well, initially we looked at all the buildings, but that proved to be too much. That was too big an ask, as they say these days. We needed to concentrate on those buildings which were really burning the juice, the bigger ones in central London, from the old New Scotland Yard.
And then we didn't really, in them days, we didn't have the half alley data, did we? You've only just started talking about half alley data then, wasn't you? The 100 kilowatts. We didn't
absolutely
have that accessibility want there. And before you arrived, I was installing these, I think they were called response meters. So I was having to put these response meters in, and they weren't accurate.
No.
I had to have the whole building shut down. I think I've done about 20 of them. And we put these systems in, and then they weren't nowhere near as accurate as what we needed to be. So you can't manage what you don't measure. So, that's what we were trying to do.
Actually, when I did think about, for that brief 2 or 3 minutes, about what I was going to say today so that I didn't make a fool of myself, that I thought was going to be my theme. I thought that is so central to managing energy in any form. My area is buildings, and I'm a Sibsy guy. So, but if you're not measuring it, it's a cliche, but if you're not measuring it, you can't manage it.
Yeah.
And half-hour meters, sub-meters, these are vital pieces of equipment for you to see what's happening and then to make informed choices. And if there was one piece of advice, if you like, that I would give, is you need to measure what you've got in order, whether that's electricity, gas, or it matters, even if you're putting new solar, wind, heat pumps, measure what they do and measure them in suitable chunks within the building that you use with sub-meters, because then you're in control. If you don't have that, I recently did some ESOS work. I do a lot of ESOS and SECA work, as you mentioned, and they had quarterly, they had meters that worked, meters that didn't work. It was and you found how are you supposed to get a shape to what your carbon emissions are and what your energy use is, if you're only getting numbers that are estimated or are on a meter that's not working properly, and the accuracy is shot, and it's vital that you're able to measure it. And as you say, back then it was just moving. I was there when we tendered our first estate, 100 kilowatt buildings. We put them out to tender, which London won, our existing supplier. But it was difficult because you didn't have the sort of data that first time in order for others to see it. They were large lumps you needed, but as time's gone on, of course, and the data's
become easier, isn't it?
It has, but it's huge. The amount of data is enormous.
Yeah.
But it is important, very, very important.
And I know we're focusing on the Met Police as such, but at that time, the split of half hourly and non-half hourly, was there a big, because we're finding that if we look at other organisations, that's the same for other organisations, isn't it? The bulk
Yeah.
of the buildings are 100 kilowatt, and the rest of them are on non-half hourly. And I know
Yes.
we've seen the transition to smart meters as such, but it isn't quick enough, is it?
No, it's not. It isn't quick enough. And I do some of the companies that I've done some work for, ESOS in particular, or separate energy surveys, because if at the top there was an interest in wanting to be able to advertise themselves as caring about the environment, caring about energy and pollution, it's changed over the over the 20 or 30 years. The emphasis has changed somewhat, but it is, you could see the difference. I'd go into some very well-known restaurant chain, and everything is submetered. And this is before building regs, would insist, and et cetera, et cetera. And so the data they had and the way they were able to control it, it was controlled just like they would control any other significant spend. I mean, it may have been less than 5% of their spend, but nonetheless, they controlled it. And it does tell you a fair bit about that business. Whereas others, you go in and you think, oh dear, I've just stepped into the past. but you do what you can.
You know what? It is stepping into the past, but then we've also got the fact that we've got estimated billing. That frustrates me when we've got lots of estimated billing. And we're trying. I've done lots of ESOS work recently where, in fact, I pick up a lot of contracts where they're looking. They should have done ESOS phase 2.
Yes.
We're in the middle of phase 3 and they still haven't done phase 2. So I've been asked to go and have a look at that for them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've said to them, right, I need to see your data for 2018. Well, of course, massive shrug.
Yeah.
They give me a pile of bills, which is
Yeah.
full of estimation,
Yes.
And even if I was to say, well, look, that's the first, and I've had to create my own years with the data.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare. Absolutely.
Yes,
but that will get better. I know that will get better.
Yeah, I think it will, because there's a drive. There's I feel as if there's a drive coming from government to as we know, ESOS is probably going to change shortly, and it's probably because they haven't answered the consultation questions and all of that yet. But there is talk about it being compulsory. By that I mean, with ESOS at the moment, you can do the report. It satisfies their compliance. It ticks that box. It satisfies the Environment Agency, and then they stick it in the file for another, and it doesn't come out again for some time.
Then we cookie cutter the next phase.
Basically. Yeah, until the next phase, and then but there is talk about making a better quality investment grade survey, and then you have to demonstrate that you're doing something about it. And that link with, when I say demonstrate to the Environment Agency, or maybe even to your shareholders through the SECA, you have to give what energy projects, if you like, that you're intending to implement, and then you have to give a report in your annual report, financial report, as to what you're doing with it. And these are important because it gets the attention of the decision makers, and also the attention of their shareholders. Actually, their shareholders might not like that their money is invested in a company that doesn't appear to care about what it's, even if it does, but it might give that impression.
This is the likes of ESG, which is, I'm liking it, and it's other people dealing with you because you're doing this.
Yes, that's right.
It's that them standards are being created. People won't invest in you unless you've got this approach, the efficiency approach, or or the way you.
One of the consultants I work with in hospitals has had to rebid to be on the NHS select list. And in order to bid to be on the government NHS select list, you need to show that your carbon impact, like a SECA or something similar. And that's important, because if the government is effectively saying you can't work for us unless you have a form of, you've looked at your, it doesn't say you have to have done anything about it actually, but you had to have looked at your carbon impact. And it's early days, I think, a lot of these things. That one particular one's not that early, but other, I've had companies come to me saying, we think we're covered by SECA, but we're not sure. What do you think? So I ask them, these are the qualifying, it's straightforward. Do you have this amount of turnover? Do you do that? Do you do this? How many people work for you? Oh yeah, we have all of that, right? But then you do. So when's that got to be in then? At the end of it goes in with your annual, your return through your accountant and your auditor. Well, that's next week. Is it?
And have you done it?
You're struggling then.
The funny thing is that then is the accountants don't know about it. It's crazy how this knowledge isn't getting filtered down to
how does it get audited and signed off if it doesn't comply?
So someone doesn't know, and someone should be knowing this, shouldn't they?
They should be. And so, but I try and see that all as a positive, that people are actually asking me, Gary, what's scope 2? Why is that different to scope 1? And where does that? So I'm happy to have that conversation, because what it says to me is that someone has reluctantly or otherwise recognized that they need to be doing something. I mean, it's the full spectrum out there. It's absolutely the full spectrum. And then, of course, it's that measurement again.
Yes.
How many cars have you got? And are you buying the fuel? If you are, how are you collecting that data? Because I have to have it like this, or it doesn't comply. And we need to talk about that sort of thing. And so it really does. I'm hopeful that it's going to, after COP26. Is it 26?
Yeah.
That there's a momentum. I'm hoping that that's going to be the case. But I have been around for a few years, and I don't rely on momentum from such things. I think momentum takes time, and it has to be backed up as well by those that don't comply. Someone, I'm afraid, has to be taken to task about it. And then the message gets out that this is real. This is embarrassing, because they've been in the newspaper or they've been in their trade journals, whatever trade it is, that they didn't comply, and shareholders won't like that. But I tend to see it as positive, really. I think people are asking the questions, and we're here to help. Sometimes just talking about it.
So, Gary, what's your personal drivers regarding this? I know you're an energy consultant. You have been for many years. Have you got in the back of your mind what, climate change or, helping organizations save money? What is your personal driver?
Yes, it's changed, as we all change. It's changed over the years. In fact, I was talking to my mother actually about it earlier. I said that when I first went to the Met, I was excited by the changes that I saw or believed were coming through the opening up of the energy market. And people would then look at what they're getting half-hour data, they'd be able to look at what they're doing. I like numbers. I like numbers, and I like to play with numbers. I get motivated by playing with numbers and seeing where it takes me and how I can analyze it. I'm an analyst, and what it means for the company and helping them make those decisions. And if you find that I think that still remains my main driver. The information is there. They can make a better job of their energy use, and there'll be benefits to all, whether that's climate change or whether it will save them money, which is obviously always a driver, and with prices going up. In a way, I just like analysing stuff. The big driver now, of course, is climate change, and I do I bought into climate change so long ago, as a lot of us did. You read the experts are not popular these days, but you listen to some people who know what they're talking about, and they provide the data for you to analyze yourself at a level that's good enough for me. And it's real, it's there, it's happening. Whether using scientific targets would be fantastic, because again, it's numbers, and I love the ability to be able to translate it to that. That's really my motivation. It's not, if you want to make a lot of money, it's not necessarily the field to go into, but it is. I find it very satisfying, especially if I have occasionally you go along to I can think of a large unnamed cinema chain, and I was surveying some of theirs, and it was at their fingertips. I sat with their UK facilities management director, or I can't remember his title. I said, right, this is the information I'm going to need. Do you have any of that? Go through your list on the different. Oh yeah, we've got it down into heating, cooling, lighting. Well, some metered, yeah, heating, cooling, lighting, refrigerants, how much might be leaking. They had the whole lot, and they got this book. And I said, it's so. These are the sites that you've chosen as representative of your entire stock. Do you have one of these for every single one? Yeah. Wow. Would you like a password to get in our BMS? So I could do that from home? Yes. And everything was LED. There was a few bits, to be fair. There was some back of house areas that weren't. Yep. But I have to say, and I do come away. They're not a challenge, but it in a way it's an example of how it can work, and it makes you feel positive about it. I'd encourage people just to talk to somebody like you, me, others on your Amulink and that sort of stuff. Normally having a chat is free.
Yeah, of course it is.
And just point you in the right direction. People will be happy to tell you, happy to talk to you, and it will talk to your managers, because it's there's a lot of jargon involved. There's a lot of ESOS, SECA, ISO 50001, another thing I do, BREEAM. Not that we've moved into we should be okay coming from the Met, because acronyms like, SG19 and PSD 47.
That's where I learned all my 3-letter abbreviations.
Yeah. My first year, there was complete, what on earth are they talking about?
Well, we didn't work for energy conservation. We worked for ENCON, didn't we? In the day.
Yes, ENCON, exactly.
So ENCON, what's ENCON? So it's energy conservation.
Energy conservation. Yeah. And yeah, crikey, it took me back now. Some lovely guys back then as well, which I know we've spoken about before. So I do. If people were to ask, then they'll find, because SECA, well, what's that, Gary? Can you? And often I have had emails. People say to me, I've been asked if I can do this by our director and my director, and it's called this. And I think, no, it's not. I think I know what he means. Would you like to go back and ask him if actually this is what he thinks? And then I'm happy to have a chat with you about it. And so people are beginning to, well, I'm hoping they're beginning to move. So we'll see.
I've created some sayings and things around this. So I have the 4 R's, which is the 4 principles of energy management, which is exactly what we've been talking about: the review, realign, reduce, and report. Yeah, then I have what I call the art of energy management, which is the awareness. The R is the reward, and the reward not just for the organization, but for us as individuals. Yes. Making them savings. I love making savings.
Yeah, me too. It feels good to do something for somebody. You feel that it feels as if it's a value. You're adding some sort of value to what they do, rather than just going in and ticking a box. No, I thoroughly, even now I thoroughly enjoy it, and I don't mind where I go within the UK. It's if you're doing representative samples, you're not visiting 1,000 sites, you're visiting 3 or 4, and then it's extrapolated up. So Working at the moment, if I may talk about it, about heat networks, the government's push on what we used to call district heating schemes, community heating schemes, and they all have a slightly different definition. But there is a number of them being pushed in city centres with companies run by the local government normally, and getting government buildings on them. And that's something else that's coming. We'll see more and more of. I doubt we'll get to the Denmark levels where things are spectacularly good. And I've learned that you can go online and see the performance of their systems because they're customers there. You can just log into some Danish website and it's there, which is a bit geeky, but you know, when I'm feeling low and it's raining outside, I'll see how often they've had their heat pumps on and how they're solar preheating.
I love it.
It makes me feel better.
You just love the data, don't you? You just love the data.
I do. It's me all over. I have to be told to stop analysing. I have to rein myself in and say, Gary, that's enough. You're not paid to do that bit.
So Gary, I don't know whether you've listened to any of my podcasts and the process of it, but we've come to that stage where I asked that infamous question, and I like to put my guests on the spot. And my question to get you on the spot is, you know, is there anything you can give back to our industry, you know, the people listening today, as a takeaway, as some advice for them?
Well, there's two bits there. It is talk to somebody who knows so that you're asking the right questions. I don't mean that to sound pompous, but often people ask the wrong question and don't understand what the right question is, and that you can ask that. But more than anything, you've got to be able to measure. You must measure. Jump in and measure what you've got. You can start slow. You don't have to listening to all of the noise around climate change and the big numbers that by 2050 we're all going to be X, Y, and Z. You've got to start small. You've got to look. Small and medium-sized enterprises, for example, are going to be key in all of this. And they won't. I'd be surprised if they know the right questions like this. What they need to do in order to keep their customers happy, because they'll have a green certification, if you like. But so speak to somebody. It doesn't have to be hugely expensive to do stuff. A lot of it can be simple to start with, like making sure your controls work. A lot of the controls, and it'll be the same for you when you go to them, they're on Christmas Day, 1947, and it's middle of the night when actually you're standing there at 10 o'clock in the morning and you think it's just not being controlled at all. And so there's simple things that can be done to make a start. And then when they are working, then you can start to look at the bigger picture. Start small and move through, measure. It's a bit like testing with COVID. It's measure it.
Exactly. It's exactly the same. Do them reviews and then start to do the action on top of that.
Yeah.
And then measure again.
And then measure again.
Yeah.
Measure all the time. It's, how many widgets you produce. You know that which factory is producing more widgets than the other one, or which one's more efficient than the other one. And it'll be exactly the same with energy. It's just another resource that, look, you need someone to advise you on what the government grants that are hopefully coming through. I would hope there's going to be things to a bit more than we have already on heat pumps, because they're expensive at the moment. So there's, that'd be my take though, really. Ask a question, it costs nothing, and then measure and do the simple things first. Assuming if you fall into compliance items, then I think they're going to get tougher, so you'll have to anyway.
Then if you're not falling into compliance, you need to ask the question, are we likely to be coming into some form? Because this compliance levels have got to drop.
It is dropping. And
because we've got to pick up all this SME work, and I worry about the SME sector because they need some support.
They don't know, who are they going to ask? It's there are bodies out there they can ask, but they've got to know they exist. And I'm afraid they're all going to be, well, most of them are going to be commercial bodies that I'll need to go to. But you can ask. Asking questions is easy. Just go ahead and ask.
This is why we've set up the likes of Umlink, because there's not enough energy consultants out there initially, I don't think, that's all singing from the same hymn sheet. And all together, that's why I've brought Umlink together, to share that knowledge. You and I have been in this industry for a long time. There's snippets of stuff that we can be giving back to them coming through.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And why reinvent the wheel and slow it? I like the way you said about, don't rush into things, do bits
just take
gradually.
Take
your time.
There is a lot of information if you know where to look. And that was once said to me, a good engineer knows where to look. He doesn't know everything. He just knows where to find it.
Exactly. And that's why all our exams, all our exams are all open book exams, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why they're open book, is so that we've got all the books in front of us. We're asked a question. We know where to look. It's about being an engineer, to know what to book, what book to look in, what areas to focus on.
Absolutely. So, so I'm positive about it.
Good.
I'd like to think I'm an optimist, maybe a foolish one, but it does feel as if there's momentum out there, though.
Yeah, I totally agree.
COVID has moved. COVID slowed things down a bit, as you'd expect. But
and it's brought a lot of energy consultants together. There's a lot of energy consultants talking. I'm a part of the energy consciousness group that meet on a regular basis, where we talk about, not putting loads of technology in, but focusing on the people to reduce energy management.
It is, and that's an area that is often missed. That you just, and it does go in my reports, that if you were to have someone who, I say drive change, they're all too big a word sometimes. It's just someone to switch the lights off when you go out, or someone who knows the system and is willing to. And these people are out there, and if you're teaching the whole organization, you only have to teach one block, and then they can teach others, because in some cases it's not rocket science. It's just, when you go home, don't leave your monitor on. Have
your
LED
AC
lights.
unit off.
Yeah, they're small things, but they do matter. They add up, and it's less gunk getting chucked into the atmosphere.
Going back to the Met Police, if we had all those lights on, or all those temperature set points set too high, the AC unit kept on, 200 plus properties, you're multiplying everything by 200 every time, aren't you?
Yeah, it was absolutely huge. It was really quite, some of those buildings, I did actually use the Metcopter, I can't remember what it was called now.
Lippett's Hill?
Yeah, flew out of Lippett's Hill. And you see on police interceptors, they have a thermal camera, and they can see the bad guy hiding under. And I do remember asking if it would be possible, when they flew back to Lippett's Hill, because they don't want to use any more fuel than necessary, of course, and it's not their prime action, but could they come past in New Scotland Yard if they happen to be over West London, then when they're flying back to Lippett's Hill West or East? I can't remember. But anyway, whichever way they were going.
It's up in Epping Forest, wasn't it, Lippett's Hill?
Yeah, that's right. But they could film the heat losses out of New Scotland Yard or down in Lambeth, one of the ones we might have been interested in, and see what it looked like. So that we could then have a look at it, and it's a good visual tool to show area. I don't know, I can't remember what they would call them in those days, area commanders or whatever, because they were broken down into those little those groups who held the money, and they held that, and we could show them how much they were losing. This is the impact if you leave that window open all night, an air conditioner, of course, that sort of thing. It's or at least cracked open. So they're good days actually. But then
very good, good learning days for me. regarding BMS, and that's where my BMS days started.
Yeah. Well, I see quite a bit of BMS about. Quite a lot of it's your ex-employer, and there's some lovely gear out there. There really is, if you like to analyse it. And but those that buy and sell energy now would appear to be starting to offer a monitoring and targeting service, because the half-hour data is being collected through them for their client. And so some of them have talked about, some of the people I've been talking to have talked about doing a monitoring and targeting service for their clients as an add-on to purchasing the energy, and also offering, which is something I offer as well now, 1 day a week energy manager. You don't have to have an energy manager. I don't know if back in the day there used to be a rule of thumb that said if you spent £1 million on energy, you needed to have one full-time person, full-time equivalent, working on energy to keep that cost down. But a lot of people don't. A lot of these small and medium-sized enterprises, they don't. So they're not going to employ and have them on their books an energy manager. But you can now go out and people will offer you 1 day a week, 1 day a month, 2 days a month, to match your need, so that someone is at least looking at your, so it's sort of outsourced, I suppose. But whether that will take off, it's difficult. All business is difficult to know, but that seems like an interesting move. But don't see energy prices dropping, and that in itself will drive companies to take a look at what's. Yeah.
Well, Gary, it's been really great catching up with you. Good to see you're still, I'm gutted that we didn't cross paths, that because I would have been working for you at the Met Police. It would have been quite enjoyable.
Been too much of a strain for me, Paul. I've got no hair. Look,
I don't know. I think it's amazing what some of the things you've been saying. You must have read the same book as me, or we've been given the same training, the same knowledge from the Met Police. Because I feel as though we're on the same page. We're on the same page as such.
Yeah, and as you say, I think they were ahead of their time, and I think totally. That they were. It's a big beast to move, and so you need to take a lot of work to move it. But they understood that it needed to be done. There was no argument about it. It was just, big beast to move, and things were changing.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really a pleasure. And I'd just like to say, lastly, you and your family stay safe in these times.
Yep, you too, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you.